Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all those across the cryptocurrency world, and welcome to the Platypus Show, where we discuss all the relevant crypto market news. We look at sectors in focus and, of course, bring you some bright ideas and opportunities for you yourselves to keep an eye on for your portfolio. Joining me today, we have Dr. Adam Sharakovsky and Mr. Perry Rancloud, as always. How are we today, gentlemen?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, good, thanks.
It's good. A bit of a rocky week in crypto markets, specifically the last 24 hours. What are our thoughts? Adam, I know you've been keeping an eye on things. It's been a rocky time, yeah?
Yeah, quite a dip, certainly within the last 24 hours or so, but we certainly also saw that in the stock markets as well. So looking broadly over the week, we did see a retraction. So let me just bring a chart with an overview here. So about the top 10. So looking at that, we are seeing certainly basically all of the major coins dropping down, both Ethereum and Bitcoin down about 8%. If you look at the top 500, about 10% of those were up as all the rest were actually down. So pretty grim week, you could say. In terms of market cap, it did retract. So the overall market cap is down about 8%. So now let's have a look at the chart about price movements. So the best performer was actually for this week was a coin token Hex, and that is claiming it to be the first token that is trying to mimic what is called like a deposit, a certificate as a deposit, and at least that's what it is trying to advertise it is. So that was in terms of price, not a big move, so 8% up. So for crypto, that is not a lot if you look at at the top 50. So in the next chart is showing market cap, and there perhaps not surprisingly for this week we're actually looking at stablecoin, bigger mover in market cap. So what does it mean? Because the stablecoin is constant at $1. So what that actually means is simply there has been such a demand for this coin that has been printing more and more, and people are buying up via fiat to turn that into a cryptocurrency. So that is, in terms of market cap, we saw the biggest move for this week. And finally, let's have a look at the volume moves for this week. And the biggest one, perhaps not surprisingly in terms of volume for this week, was Dogecoin. And of course, that is related to what? Twitter, Elon Musk, and what has been happening with that? That is, of course, in equity space, but certainly big news, and that has affected Dogecoin very much so.
Yeah, well, look, you talked about equity markets there, and I think we mentioned this last week and the week before, and I've got a specific chart I'd like to bring up, just showing you Bitcoin versus the NASDAQ. Now, the NASDAQ, as we know, is a very tech-heavy index, and of course, we've seen this very close correlation with cryptocurrency assets and, of course, Bitcoin. And the NASDAQ. So the chart we have on screen is the performance over the last year. And we see that very close correlation between Bitcoin, which is the orange, and the NASDAQ, which is the blue line, almost tracking each other exactly. Now, this week in particular and last night, we saw the NASDAQ dip 3.95%, and then Bitcoin was down about 5% as well. So almost following each other step for step for step. And as I said last week, and I'll say this week again, that's a relationship that I do think would be to continue. Would you agree, Adam?
Absolutely.
What would it take for us to break that close correlation if it's just going to continue?
Well, we certainly need to see some new movements, like bigger movements into the cryptocurrency, something like really exceptionally happening that could potentially move the entire crypto market in different directions. So that could be innovations we haven't seen before. Or, for example, if we can really optimize some of the transaction speed and really bring the coins to more people.
Yeah, of course. Now, Perry, you've been keeping an eye on things, especially CBDCs. You spoke about the Bank of International Settlements a few weeks ago, and now we've got yet another country looking at the same space, doing the same thing, but one country that's been in the news for different reasons recently, and that is Russia. Tell me, what's happening in Russia, and how are they meddling with central bank digital currencies right now?
Yes, well, this is a bit of an interesting story. So the president of the Central Bank of Russia, his name is Elvira Nabiullina, I believe I've said that correctly, he said that the digital ruble will begin its pilot program for international settlements starting next year. Mm-hmm. And so obviously this is going to have a few problems due to previous sanctions that have been put on the ruble. Now we know that Russia has been kicked off SWIFT, which is the international payments platform, and also Visa and MasterCard have also ended their services in Russia. Mm-hmm. And so Russia has been looking for a way to actually deal with international trade. So obviously with their gas payments, they've looked at asking people to pay in rubles, which has also caused more problems.
Yeah.
But there's also been a lot of talk about how Russia possibly will use digital currencies and to get around the sanctions. Now, this has come up in a way that we didn't actually expect. So Russia's ramped up their process of building a CBDC. And this is going to be a pilot program where central banks who are willing to do trade with Russia will be able to transfer money to and from the ruble. Now, this is actually different to the Bank of International Settlements that we talked about previously. So the Bank of International Settlements, the way that they was implementing their program was that they would take a CBDC from a country and then swap it with another CBDC from another country and using their own blockchain. But it looks like Russia is implementing their international settlements program by putting everybody onto the same CBDC.
Right. Okay. And in Russia, of course, they're looking, as you mentioned, for these alternate payments methods to open up their world, and they'll be transacting with only specific countries at this point. Are we able to shed any light on which countries they'll be looking at, or is it the usual suspects of the Chinas, the Irans, maybe the Indias as well, who haven't really criticised, I suppose, what they're doing in Ukraine and still standing on the side of Russia due to whatever political ties that they've got? Would that be right?
Yeah, I'd guess so. So we don't actually know who would actually who would swap over in the future, but I think it would be the usual suspects, the ones that are still trading now amid the sanctions.
Yeah, of course. And just a final bit of news from myself. I know we've been speaking recently about an ETF to be listed in Australia, which was some exciting news. And that was kicked off last week with Cosmos Asset Management, a local company here which would be running the ASX listed ETF. Now, that was meant to get kicked off at 10 o'clock this morning, Australian time, at the open of the market. However, unfortunately, overnight we got the unfortunate news that that wasn't going ahead. Now, what they've said is that there was a third-party broker blocking investment products that would be allowing them to list on the Australian exchange. Now, no specific company was blamed, no one was named, but they did say it was a service provider downstream who needed more time to support the trade of products. Now, very obscure. What that means, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. But what they're saying, they're still really awaiting that regulatory green light. Now, we've seen this in America. There's no Bitcoin Cash ETFs, only futures ETFs. And a lot of these have had difficulty listing over time. This is the first one in Australia, and there's already roadblocks. Adam, do you think that these products are going to continue to have this difficulty getting onto equity exchanges? Because this one's already been waiting 5 months. And on the day it's meant to go live, the night before, it hits that roadblock. Do you think that's a trend that's to continue? And will it improve, or is it just something we have to accept?
I do think we will be seeing things like this happening again in the future. Hopefully, it will be more streamlined in the future. But I do see Bitcoin, generally speaking, always will be having some adoption problems. Because remember the thing, the system or cryptocurrency is always trying to be innovating, pushing for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And when you do that, obviously, there will be some complication arising.
Yeah, I suppose the market and the crypto world is so far ahead of what the regulators can understand that every time they bring them a new product, they're still catching up to the one 5 iterations ago. So, look, I agree. I think this could be a continued issue. Hopefully, they get this ETF live soon. As I've been saying, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for Australians who don't have their feet in that water yet to jump in. Roughly 15 to 20%, no exact figure, 15 to 20% of Australians own digital assets now. And of course, people involved in equity markets is much, much higher. So giving them the ability and of course, major listed funds to go into it as well. A drop in the water when we talk about the world of crypto asset management, but definitely something to look at.
Definitely a good start, yeah, absolutely.
Of course. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for that market news. Now, as always, each week we choose a specific sector to dig deeper into. And this week we're looking at data management, what it is, and of course, which projects and coins you can get involved in. Now, to answer the cryptic question, Adam, I'll get you to jump in. What is data management? And what is data management when we talk about cryptocurrencies and blockchain?
Well, that is a tricky question because data management is just so many things when it comes to cryptocurrencies and the metaverse and anything related to that. So I think one possible way to kind of trying to address that is just to mention a couple of specific examples, a couple of specific coins perhaps. So let me just mention, let's see here 3 of the major or biggest coins within data management. So that is BitTorrent, Filecoin, and Graph Token. So these are some of examples. And let me actually dive into one of those. So for today, I've decided to focus on BitTorrent because that is the one we really know the most. So I think most people, when you tell them BitTorrent, they're not really thinking about a token. They are thinking about file sharing and file downloading. It is a software that you could download on your computer, and that could help you download various type of digital files that you were interested in. So here is firstly just to remind you how that works. So a very simple process. So there's a short chart here showing how a BitTorrent works. So basically you download a torrent file, and that basically contains information how you can download that file. So so you contact a server. That provides information about who can you be connected to, and then you connect to those, and then you can basically, the beauty of this system is you can download this one single file from multiple sources across the network. And that is a really great thing. So one disadvantage is, however, like this great system has been existing for a very long time, but the company hasn't been able to monetize on that. So that was a big problem. So they were like, so what do you do? So basically what happened is that this company was bought up, and then cryptocurrency BTT was created. And now you can actually like monetize, earn money, and by doing that. So let me just give specific example. So if you're interested in having faster download, then buy the BTT token, and you can spend that to improve that. If you are struggling to find certain files on the network, again, that's where the BTT coin can help. You can kind of request files or help people provide those files to you. And great service. So just by paying a little bit of a token, you can much faster get information you're looking for. On the other hand, of course, people that want a small profit or want to contribute to the network, they can provide files on their server or what they have. And by doing that, by having seeding, as it's called, for BitTorrent, then you will be provided with tokens as a reward. So very, very good system. And now with the addition of the token on top of that, it's even better.
Yeah, well, we look at BitTorrent, I do think it's got quite a fascinating past, because its establishment predates really Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as we know it. Established back in 2004, I don't think anyone should be putting up their hands that they used it back then, but it was originally used to illegally distribute, movies, TV shows, music, and all sort of data that would be passed around, and that would be illegally downloaded off the internet. Now, Justin Sun, who was a Chinese millionaire, don't believe he was a billionaire yet, he bought the company for $140 million, revamped it into a new light and a new area, and used blockchain technology to implement these data management and file sharing systems that we know of it today. Now, we know cryptocurrency is a battle between decentralization and centralization. Is there any sort of centralization involved in BitTorrent, or has it been able to completely jump into a decentralized network where files are shared, or is there a centralized element? Because that's what people really want to know.
Well, there is still an aspect of centralized concept in this project, but who knows how the future would be moving, and because we have seen a lot of other big projects where that has been completely removed. So for example, Aave was one of the projects that really was monitored by a smaller group of people, and now later completely decentralized.
Yeah, what we do see is, I suppose, initially a company dumping into blockchain, and then over time moving to a decentralized future. That's part of their roadmap and future. Now, despite whether you're decentralized or centralized, that's something for a viewer to look at when you're looking at data management and file sharing tokens. There's still some great progress from companies like BitTorrent. I know recently or last year they partnered with Huawei, one of the biggest telecommunications providers in the world, to use their mobile phone services where you can use BitTorrent on their phone applications. So these sort of partnerships really just show you the power of the services they provide, jumping into massive industries.
Yeah, and even though we don't hear so much about the app, it is still the world's largest peer-to-peer software.
Largest peer-to-peer file sharing application. Wow. Well, exactly, that's the power of it. Now, when we say the largest, I think that segues perfectly into a question I have for you, Perry. Sharing information takes a lot of space, takes a lot of, I suppose, energy as well. We know that Amazon would have their own massive centers where they store data. How much data can you store on a blockchain? How does that work? And is it efficient over the long run?
Yeah, well, there's different ways to actually store data on all the different coins. There are many different coins out there.
Yep.
So the file storage for Bitcoin was the original Bitcoin was able to store data, and the way that would do it was to attach data to the end of a transaction. So I'd send money to you, and I'd just attach some data. Now there wasn't much space at that time. It was only a small network, but it had the ability to have a bigger block size and to put more data on there. That could be movies or music or anything like that. I think BTC's been capped to not allow that. But people had an issue with how big the blockchain would actually get.
Yep.
So potentially the size of it could be unlimited. It could grow and grow and grow, including all the transactions that need to go on there as well. But if we look into the white paper, Satoshi actually had a solution to this and the way that we could handle this growing blockchain. And that is, if we were to send transactions, that a spent transaction doesn't need to actually be stored forever. So if that address is being used, then it doesn't need to stay there on the blockchain forever. And this is actually section 7 of the white paper under the name Reclaiming Disk Space. Now, I have a diagram here which actually sort of shows the idea of this. Now, this has picked up the name pruning. Okay, so this is the Merkle tree that we see in the diagram, and what we're doing is pruning spent transactions. So ones that have been buried under enough transactions that they're no longer relevant anymore and won't be used, so they no longer be stored. And so on the left we have the Merkle tree transaction, on the right it's been pruned, and so that only leaves transaction 3, which what we would expect is probably an unspent transaction. It's still got money sitting there.
Yep.
So if I was to upload data to a blockchain, like how could I make sure that that data isn't going to be pruned? Well, the answer to that is actually pretty simple, is that you would actually, for the original Bitcoin, it would be to leave a small amount of money sitting on that transaction forever. And then that would actually hold down that transaction and stop it from being pruned.
Okay.
So that was the basic idea of how the blockchain would handle this scaling problem, and the size of the blockchain.
And of course, when we talk about pruning, can that be applied to not only small pieces of data where transactions are pruned, but can it be, I suppose, applied to any sort of data management and file share, like storing information on a blockchain, on any blockchain?
Yeah, well, the many blockchains are different, but this is the underlying idea of how the blockchain works. And so, yeah, it's a transaction would be the hash, would have that, and that would be linked to whatever data is actually put in that position. So if there's no money sitting on the transaction, then potentially that can be pruned off, and any data that was linked with that would also be pruned off too.
When we talk about Satoshi's vision for what would go onto the blockchain, it's all up in the air, but what would you say? Would you say his vision for the information going onto the blockchain was specifically transaction data, wallet to wallet, or would you say he had a vision for more going onto the blockchain because it does have the ability? Is that right?
Yeah, well, but when it was first invented, Bitcoin didn't have a block size cap. So that was actually implemented later. And it did allow you to put data of any size. So you could have, if you were to pay for it, you could have put movies and things like that on there. So we're of the opinion from Satoshi's writings that this would have allowed for a file storage.
Yeah, of course. So he gave it to a community of developers and people, including himself, to make those decisions. But the initial Bitcoin did allow the potential to store a lot more on there. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. That was sort of inhibited by a block size cap that was put on. Well, when the network was very small, you couldn't just upload a big file. If you were to upload a very massive movie when there wasn't many nodes around, that could have actually caused a lot of problems with the network. Yeah. So in the early days, it was blocked, and then as we've evolved, we've sort of Bitcoin has evolved away from this idea of actually allowing it for storage. But there are other Bitcoin forks that still allow this file storage to be done.
Very nice. And just to wrap up this section on data management and file sharing tokens, just to give you an overview of what's in the market. So as Adam mentioned, Filecoin is the largest by market capitalization, sitting at $3.3 billion US. BitTorrent, the second, is $1.6 billion. Airweave is third at $900 million US. And then we get a sharp drop off with Holo, Seacoin, and Stored. So just a bit of a wrap up there. But ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed that jump into data management. Next, we've got a very special interview of a guest of the show, Gareb Shamus, and we're going to go to that right now. Today we're joined by a NFT pioneer who rose from his background in comic books and arts. I'll leave most of the introducing to do to himself, but today we're joined by Gareb Shamus. Gareb, how are you today?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you. Yeah, it's so exciting. Love talking about superheroes.
Yeah, very nice. Well, that's where I'd like to start off. You've got a background in comic books, and that's where you found your love for the arts, and you founded Wizard Magazine back in 1991. Can you quickly tell us about Wizard Magazine and your initial love for comic books, superheroes, and, as I mentioned, art in general?
Yeah, so I grew up collecting comic books. I have three brothers, and it became such a big family hobby that my mom opened up a comic book store. So when I was a kid, it was like literally having a candy store in the family. And then when I graduated, though, college, there was nothing out there to tell me what was going on in the space. So I started a newsletter about comics, and people loved it so much, I turned it into a magazine called Wizard. And within just about a year, it started going global. And within 5 years, we were selling hundreds of thousands of copies all over the world. It was really incredible how people really gravitated to what was going on in the superhero world. And being a geek and a nerd back in those days was not fun, believe me.
Yeah, and you're still running that magazine today, correct?
No, the print magazine's been out for a while, but what happened was by the mid '90s, it became so popular that we wanted to throw a party, and we called it Comic-Con. And when we threw this party, literally 20,000 people showed up, and it was this really magical moment where all these disenfranchised people, all the geeks and the nerds got together, and we were just really having fun, and that really galvanized the whole movement, towards superheroes. It was really people seeing each other in person that really made us all kind of get together and really form this bond that really has now set the world on fire over the last 25 years.
Yeah, and Comic-Con was arguably one of your greatest achievements, but you've moved into, I suppose, a newer space, and you've moved into cryptocurrency, NFTs, and the metaverse, and that whole thing in general. Tell us, what was the first thing that caught your attention about the space, what drew you to it, and why you're loving it so much and involved in it right now?
Well, every aspect of me getting involved in the superhero world was to take the medium that we used and make it appropriate. So with the magazine, it was being able to deliver this information to people that they would never normally have access to. And then the live events was to bring people in person to the things that would never get a chance to meet. And then we went online and social, and they got to interact with people and now with Web3, it creates this whole sense of ownership and this idea that giving people, whether it's the creative, the talent, the fans, a real true ability to be involved in the future of those franchises. It's really incredible. So that's why I started a company called Hero Maker. And the whole concept is to create heroes and for fans to be on this hero journey, on the hero's journey, which is the whole idea that we create these franchises and then people read these NFT comic books and they collect the NFTs, and then they get into the idea that they create their own and really be involved with where ultimately they become the hero of their own journey.
So when did you found Hero Maker Studios? How big is the team and what is the vision?
So we started the company about a year ago, and we have quite a few people on the team. We have a bunch of full-time people, but we work with a lot of freelancers all over the world. I've been so blessed in my life to work with some incredible people, and Hero Maker was just a really great opportunity to bring everyone together. And they're people that are the best at what they do. So whether it's the artists that are creating the franchises, or the tech team that we're working with, or people in marketing. But at the heart of it, it's really our ability to create these incredible communities and really make people feel like they're special and they're welcome and they're wanted. And especially in the world where, a lot of people don't understand the blockchain or Web3 or crypto or especially NFTs, we definitely want to be able to create this environment where everybody is included and not create an exclusive environment, but really an inclusive environment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so let us move to one of the projects that was actually launched by Hero Maker Studios. It's called Kumite. And can you tell us why this project's exciting?
Yeah, so at the heart of everything that we do at Hero Maker, it's about storytelling and it's about epic storytelling. And what we wanted to do is create this incredible battle between the heroes and the villains of the world. And we created 24 different families of heroes and villains. And we have 240 unique characters, 120 villains and 120 heroes. And they get into this battle tournament that are going to take place through the NFTs that we create. And then we're going to do a generative drop of 9,600 of the characters that are going to appear in the Kumite tournament. And then we're going to take this battle through the NFTs and into comic books. And we built this incredible backstory that people are going to be able to participate in the battles that are won or lost. And we really want fans to engage, where it's not just continuing our story, but them being able to tell the stories of the battles of their characters. But it all starts with the stories. And we have this new property. It's called Kumite, and it's really exciting in terms of us being able to share this with the world.
And would you say, I suppose, the endearing and why it's so attractive is that always loved battle between the heroes and villains, something that has been timeless for so long? And do you think that timelessness will continue into the future through NFTs, through the metaverse, and all the projects that you do in the future? It's really based on that hero-villain love that people have, that I suppose maybe was part of your first love with comic books.
Absolutely. I mean, it always comes down to the heroes and the villains of the world. You know, the people that have experienced something and then they try to do good from it, or the people that have experienced something and then they try to do something bad with it. And that kind of dynamic is always going to exist. And, you know, to be able to create these heroes and use comic books as a way for storytelling and getting people to be to care about these characters and to create that kind of that love for these characters, you know, that you can only do through this type of storytelling. If you look at all the biggest films that have come out, so many of them have their origins in comic books. And that's because it's just been an incredible medium to build that relationship between the fans and the characters. And now being able to do that with Kumite, we're able to not only create that relationship, but also now people can actually be these characters and participate in a way that they've never been able to do before.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious in regards to how we get our hands on these NFTs. So if I understand correctly, there's 9,600 in total, and there is potentially a pre-sale, or how is that? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so in about a month from now, we're working on doing our pre-sale and the drop. And yeah, we're really excited. Every day we're launching new content on social media, especially Twitter and Discord. And we're hosting a lot of spaces. And what we're doing is we're debuting all the heads of the families. So the heads of the angels, or the demons, or the warlocks, or the superheroes, or the supervillains, or the witches, or the wizards. So every day we're launching new family heroes, the family leaders. And that's going to lead up to the drop that we're doing in about a month from now. So stay tuned for that. And we're going to make it very, we're going to create a lot of publicity around how people are going to be able to participate in that.
Yeah, and just one final question from myself. It's been great spending time with you today, Gareb. What do you see, I suppose, as the future of both NFTs, the metaverse, and the gaming community really falling in love with, as you mentioned, this community-driven idea behind NFTs? Do you see this as the future for the entire industry, for yourself? And where do you see Kumite and your own Hero Maker Industries in the future? What is the future vision that you have for the project and the industry?
Yeah, there's no question that the future is absolutely storytelling. And, you know, you want to be able to engage people. They have to feel like they're part of the story. And then not only is it the storytelling, but also being a part of the story. And I believe gaming is actually the biggest way that people are going to be able to participate in the metaverse and in these franchises and in these characters. So everything about what we're doing with Kumite is working backwards. So we know that gaming and not just having an association with these characters, but being these characters in the metaverse and in these gaming platforms is the way to go. So working backwards, that's what we're doing. But it all starts with having a great story. And that's going to be, I think, the next biggest kind of revolution in the NFT space is people starting to share the stories of these characters, because it's the only way to get more and more people engaged.
Yeah. Gareb Shamus, thank you very much for spending time with us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there was your expert insight for the week from Gareb Shamus from Hero Maker Studios. Each week, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be going to an industry expert, whether they're in the metaverse, NFTs, or they just run their own blockchain project themselves, asking them questions on their view of the market in general and, of course, their own project. So keep an eye out for next week's episode of Expert Insights. Now, for the final section of the show, where we deep dive into one specific token or coin in particular and give you insights in what that could mean for your portfolio. I'll throw it over to Adam Sharakovsky first today. Last week you brought Step N, which of course just keeps on stepping higher. And this week you've got another one. So hopefully it does as well. We've got Near Protocol. Take us through what is Near Protocol and why have you brought it to the panel this week?
Well, so it is an entirely different blockchain, so a competitor to Bitcoin, a competitor to Ethereum in particular, I would say. Because what we know about Ethereum, when you think about it, is like a lot of projects, a lot of apps or dApps, decentralized applications. And then a competitor for that is Near Protocol, where you also can produce apps, applications in both faster and cheaper. So that's at least one of their slogans. But I want to get a little bit technical, like explaining how is it possible to get it so efficient. So in terms of numbers, this protocol can do 100,000 transactions per second. I mean, how is that even possible? So you have to like imagine all possible scenarios of how can you increase speed, and basically that is implemented by this protocol. So firstly, in terms of speed, typically it will be faster to implement proof of stake, which they have as opposed to proof of work typically. And on top of that, there is an issue with proof of stake, because even when you're applying that proof of stake mechanism, which is allowing everyone mining based on their allocation of coins, and that is very quickly verifiable, if everyone is participating, that can create chaos. So, and in particular, if someone is not maybe their software isn't perfect, that can create complications, or it could slow down the speed, right? So what is done to solve that? And that is by delegated proof of stake. So we actually mentioned that last week. So you mentioned that.
EOS.
Yeah, exactly. So Near Protocol is doing the same thing. They're having delegated proof of stake. So that is selecting people. And for this one, it doesn't happen by a vote. It happens by basically people investing the highest amount of Near Protocol tokens on their wallet. So basically the top 100 are selected, and these are the validators. And it is about 100,000 Near coins you need to own at the moment. So a significant amount. But that does help to make sure that it's only the best of the best that are being selected, because it does require a bit of investment. So having that is kind of the first step to implement delegated proof of stake. But on top of that, they're doing something entirely different that is even speeding things up. So when you think about something like Ethereum, or you think about maybe Bitcoin in particular, the way it works is everyone is trying to find the next block.
Yes.
Right? So you have a blockchain, and everyone is trying to find the next block following the last one. So everyone is doing the same computation for that block. And it's thousands of computers trying to do the same thing, and only one wins at the end. So there's a lot of inefficiency in that. So you could think about, imagine the situation if we could somehow distribute that, and smaller groups could work on their own individual computation. So that is called sharding in Near Protocol. And so you're basically dividing the pool of miners. So even though there are even we're already down to the delegated ones, you're even grouping those in smaller portions.
So what you're talking about is multiple blocks worked on together rather than the whole network working on one at a time. And each one of those is a different shard that a group of nodes are working on.
Yeah,
is that right?
And yes, exactly. And basically whoever, so it's done in such a way that it doesn't has to be linear. So they can actually put it into one blockchain, but it doesn't have to be a linear process. So they can work together on different independent computations, but still be able to add things to the blockchain regardless of that. So very cool technology that is developed in the Near Protocol. And that is what really allows to speed up the process. And it's a fairly new protocol as well. So the idea came in 2019, and it was first initiated in 2020. So a fairly new project comparing to Bitcoin, for example. And there is a lot of prospects. So one thing I want to mention is like there are always this competition in crypto space. Who is the best project and the best performer? So this one was actually rewarded for the best prize. So the best Bitcoin technology prize in 2021, that went to Near Protocol. And of course, there are a lot of those, but still, I mean, it's not easy. There are like the hundreds and thousands of projects potentially competing for these prizes. So there was at least one token of recognition there. And specifically of this week, I think one thing that so we have seen this. Actually, let's have a look at the chart. So we have seen a broad uptrend for the price. And so it dipped quite recently, as you can see. But if you really zoom in the last day, we actually had some very positive news within the last 24 hours or so. And that is the new protocol was introducing their stable coin, which is, I think, is very promising. They're just adding more and more exciting things to the protocol. So that it was just launched within the last 24 hours. And a stable coin, certainly in this volatile market, I mean, any type of when there's volatility, when we have very interesting stablecoin projects coming up, there's always something that will, I think, push the market in a positive direction for that project.
Now, just going back to the sharding. Now, of course, it's a different network security that we're talking about there versus regular proof of stake and regular, say, proof of work. Is there any less so security? Is it less secure than having the whole network than just having this small group? Or has it been proven over time that it provides just as much or nearly as much security as we would before?
Well, so I think theoretically speaking, I think you're right that you cannot say that it is the same safety.
Okay.
Because simply by dividing, by having a smaller group working on something, there was always a higher chance of a bigger proportion of those people potentially trying to do something malicious. However, we haven't seen the NEAR protocol really having issues, and they have been able to, by selecting, by the way the people the group sharded or grouped together, they have kind of prevented people to act maliciously. So they have a couple of clever ways to get around these issues, and I think that as a consequence, they haven't had any issues. So practically, I think the safety is about the same level.
Yeah, well, that is NEAR Protocol, another Ethereum killer coming after the biggest smart contract platform. Thank you very much for that, Adam. And then finally, on our schedule for the show today, we've got Perry. Tron is the project that you're bringing to the table today. I gave a little bit of a segue into it before, mentioning our friend Justin Sun. But tell us, what is Tron and why have you brought it this week?
Yeah, well, Tron is another delegated proof of stake coin, okay, similar to EOS and NEAR protocol that we've talked about. It was actually invented in 2017 by Justin Sun that we mentioned earlier. And so he's actually well known from a number of different reasons. So he actually worked in Ripple in 2013. He was also the underbidder for Beeple's $69 million NFT. Which
underbidder, so you're saying he underbidded, or?
It means that he was second place.
He missed out.
He missed out, but he tried to get it. And another thing that he's done recently, he's bought a flight on the Blue Origin trip into space, which we due at the end of the year.
How much did he pay for that?
Oh, it's in the millions.
It's in the millions.
I heard, was it 20 million or something? Yeah. I mean, I also know he paid millions for a lunch with Warren Buffett at some point in the past. So he's a rich man with plenty of money to throw around. But Tron comes from 2017. What is Tron and what sets it apart?
Well, Tron, okay, it's as I said, it's a delegated proof of stake, and there's currently 102 billion coins in circulation, and there's no max supply. So this is an inflationary coin, like we've seen before. Now, the consensus for it is actually a little bit different, slightly different to EOS, and that the nodes act as a witness. So 27 of these witnesses are selected, and they're selected by how many votes they get. And these nodes, with the highest votes, they become the witness for a certain period of time, and then they run the voting again. And this allows Tron to do up to 2,000 transactions per second, so not quite NEAR protocol, but still a lot.
That is a lot, yeah.
And so the code is actually very similar to Ethereum, other than the delegated proof of stake, but the way that it works. So I have a diagram here that sort of explains the architecture. And so it works on a three-layer system, which is divided into the storage layer, the core layer, and the application layer. And now this system allows for smart contracts to be built on there fairly easily, and many projects can build on there easily, the same way that Ethereum does. So another Ethereum killer. Now, in 2018, or as we've heard just before, it was Tron who bought BitTorrent. Now, they actually paid $126 million US for BitTorrent, and they released this token on Tron as a smart contract. So that's another one that's
So
built
Bitcoin is an existing on the Tron network and the Tron
on
blockchain.
BitTorrent.
BitTorrent, is
Yes.
existing on Tron.
Yes,
correct?
it's a smart contract on the Tron network, and so they actually bought BitTorrent in 2018, and then they released the BitTorrent token in 2019. Now, last week, what makes Tron actually interesting is that last week they actually announced plans to release a Tron stablecoin, which will be another token smart contract on the chain. But as we've seen before, that these stablecoins actually boost the coin quite a fair bit. So,
Yeah. Well, Perry, thank you very much for that. We have two currencies we brought to the table, or tokens, should I say. We had Near Protocol from Adam, and we had Tron from Perry. Some very interesting discussion today. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the Platypus Show this week. As always, we've covered the latest crypto market news. We've done a deep dive in one sector in particular, and we had our Expert Insights interview today with Gareb Seamus, and of course, at the end there, our hot opportunities. I'll see you next time on the Platypus Show.